Welcome also Amanda Mogan-Wilson. She's the head of communication and engagement at Jardine Motors Group. Hello, Amanda. Welcome. And we're waiting for Paul. Paul is he's going to join us in a minute, I suppose. Both you are going to talk about the radical workplace shift. Well, how can technology supercharge employee experience?
But what I wanted to talk about was the incredible shifts that we've seen in the digital workplace, and particularly affecting the employee experience over the last 12 to 18 months, as we've all gone through this shared experience. And I'm delighted to be joined by Amanda, who is a great partner and of Livetiles and a customer in the UK. And the four different shifts that we wanted to talk about, and then talk to Amanda about her experiences in the world of retail in the UK, to sort of really give us some stories around that. So the first one is around employee experience, which has essentially shifted very rapidly from physical to digital. And I think very welcome also, it has become elevated in terms of its strategic importance in organizations. This is also comes with certain risks, because we have issues like the erosion of employee commitment, if employees are not engaged enough, and if they're not feeling if they're feeling isolated or whatever. There's the risk of talent flight, and that's happening already in the market. And I know it's been identified in the recent PwC study as the #1 risk that CEOs consider globally at the moment. And like really bringing in the employee experience to try and mitigate that, and to try and support employees in the workplace, in the digital workplace, has now become a very, very significant discussion from leadership board level right through to, of course, communications and HR, who've always worked on this. So good signs in many ways. And of course, it risks as well, this shift from physical to digital, it risks the siloing of information and apps. So that's something that, that to create that culture of a more integrated employee experience is extremely important. So Amanda, on that issue of employee experience shifting rapidly from physical to digital, I'd love to hear your experience in Jardine Motors and how you've, the different risks or challenges you've had and how you've coped with them.
Thanks, Paul. I think COVID sort of helped in some ways. We were on a digital transformation journey anyway, but I think when you're hit with a crisis, and as I said in my sort of introduction before you joined, about how you maintain connectivity with 3,000 people where they're geographically dispersed in different statuses of employment within the business, you've got to rely on technology to facilitate that. And whereas pre-crisis, it was almost, when we introduced Office 365 and the new communications channels that came with that, it almost felt like it was a choice. Colleagues could choose to engage with it. They could find a way to see whether it fitted within their way of working. The crisis made it essential, because without it, we wouldn't have been able to, to do some of the things that we did. So we went from, if I look at the data around Teams, for example, we went from a couple of thousand sessions within a month to, we're now at millions of sessions a month in terms of whether people are using it for meetings, chat, content sharing, collaboration, etc. So Teams was a really big thing. And then in the middle of the crisis, we decided to launch a new intranet, a new Yammer channel. So it all sort of started to come together. I think one of the things that I learned from that, and continue to learn around the employee experience, is you've got to, for me, the strategy is about make it seamless and make it easy and be where the colleague is. So everyone works a bit differently. We've got a broad range of roles within the organization, so everyone uses technology differently. And you need to make it easy for them to, for colleagues to interact with that. So the whole point around what we did with Office 365 and the channels and the app that we launched to facilitate that was, you know, go where the colleagues are, integrate the channels. So it's not that mindset of I have to go to Teams, or I have to go to the intranet, or I have to go to Yammer to find stuff. It's if I spend 90% of my time working in Teams, you know, I can see that the intranet's integrated into there, so I can go to that as an information portal. I've got Yammer integrated into my Power Panel in Teams as well. So if I want to see more socially what's going on across the business, I can find it all in that one place. I haven't got to go to lots of different areas to do that. And I think, you know, what we've learned from the employee experience is that we all have expectations, don't we, as an employee now, based on our out of work experiences. So how we interact with brands, how we interact with companies, we expect that in our day-to-day working lives as well. So the challenge is, how do you keep pace with that? And yeah, that's been one of the risks.
Absolutely. I mean, that's an incredible rollout at an incredible speed, and I think that's been a common story for many organizations, and it's really impacted their culture in terms of, you know, online collaboration and communication, and yeah, really emphasize the importance of the employee experience. I loved what you said there, and it's related to the second challenge, which is less on the culture side, but more on the tools and processes side, right? The massive digitalization of work, like rolling out teams like that. But you said about, you know, you have to be where the employee is. You need to be where the employee is, and really, you know, give them that sort of singular integrated experience. I think that is very much the secret sauce that many organizations are looking for. So I'd love to hear a little bit more around that, like how that's working and how people adopted to it, and what sort of feedback you're getting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Probably like a lot of organizations, if I was to look at the demographic of our colleagues, I'd say we've got 5 to 6 different generations within our business. You know, we've got 18-year-olds through to 70-year-olds, and within that is quite a broad spectrum when you look at digital workplace, because, you know, you're always going to find that that what we did that worked really well was we created an early adopters network. We called them digital ninjas, and you know, it's basically we sought out colleagues who are passionate about technology, passionate about digital, and are good influencers within the more localized teams that we could use to help drive that adoption quicker. So we bring that network together, we launch new things to them, whether it's, you know, latest features in Teams, here's what's coming down the line in terms of new features in Yammer, and we educate them to then go and spread the word internally, as well as all the internal comms that we would do as well. Because I think, you know, what you can't do is you can't launch something new and just expect everyone to adopt it straight away and understand how to use it. There's that adoption curve, isn't there, in terms of, you know, the early adopters and then the laggards. And what you have to do is, as with any technology, particularly when you're using something like an Office 365 ecosystem, it's constantly shifting as well. So you constantly have to go back to the beginning and start again in terms of the adoption around it. So yeah, that's definitely been a challenge, but I think, you know, you can do things at group level, but what you need is, particularly in our infrastructure, you need those local champions to help make it happen and to help support everyone, because you've got to bring everyone on the journey with you. And that's been the biggest thing for us, and that's part of our next stage is how do you realize make the most of that business investment, and what do you deem as best practice, and constantly reevaluate that. So yeah, that's really great story to share, and I think you know, will be very interesting for all of the colleagues that are listening in. I love the term digital ninja. So you identified digital ninjas and essentially nurtured this
core community to be your advocates. And I think as well, I mean, all the evidence in community engagement and employee engagement backs that up. That is a very, very sensible way to go. You'll always have this core group of enthusiastic early adopters, and you need to embrace them, show them the love, show them that people are listening, support them, and feedback to action. I think also really important, not just enough to issue surveys and share the results, but really, that feedback to action culture, really important.
Within that, you get the stories. So, you know, technology is just an enabler. What you need to do is then find out how people are using it. So how does it fit within their working lives? And as I was saying earlier, you know, we've got a broad spectrum of different roles in our business, and everyone will use it differently for different, you know, successes and purposes. So by having those digital ninjas, when we launch a new feature or we do something a bit different, we say, go and test it, go and use it and tell us how you do it. And then we can take those stories and replay them back out to help inspire others. Because if someone's sat there going, I don't really get how to use that, I'm not sure it's right for my role, we can use those stories to inspire them and influence them. And that works really well, so that you've got those use case examples to keep the conversation going.
You're really cultivating a grassroots storytelling, which is much more authentic as well, you know, than something just coming from, let's say, the communications department or whatever. Great stuff. The third challenge, and I know this is something close to both of our hearts, or the third development over the last 12 to 18 months has been the prioritization of frontline workers. And I know we have a lot of frontline organizations attending this event today. That has been, if we're honest, traditionally quite a neglected constituency, but they played such a prominent role in protecting us and keeping the economy going during the COVID-19 experience, which is ongoing in many parts of the world. And there was a massive rush and prioritization and urgency to engage frontline workers much more definitively within the workplace. Now, I know in your organization, you have different cohorts of employees from headquarters to the front lines and the shop floors, etc. How have you risen to that challenge at Jardine Motors, and what are you learning from it?
I think the first thing to say is they've always been recognised as important. I think it's just that up until the crisis, the way to reach them was quite traditional and offline communication. You know, we expect a lot of our line managers as a communications conduit, if you like. We send a lot of comms out at group level, and we sort of expect it to be cascaded down by line managers, and they would traditionally have done that very face to face. You know, they'd have huddle meetings 10 at 10 every day, and more strategic weekly and monthly sessions. But when you can't do that, particularly when your workforce is then socially distanced, it was Teams was the savior in it all. And again, we had to reevaluate and rethink, okay, how do we get line managers using a virtual channel to communicate and reach their teams? And we had to do lots to equip them with that information, to, you know, get them up to speed, give them regular management briefings that they could cascade, as well as then look at kind of making things more app-based, so that, you know, colleagues can find the information should they need to. And it's, you know, I watch presentations from Patrick, the CTO of Livetiles, and he presents this utopia, doesn't he, of what a communications ecosystem looks like. And I always sit there and think, oh, I'd love to get there. It's a constant journey. But the next thing for us really is identifying, okay, what are the channels more so beyond Teams that line managers can use more formally for communication. And we're trialing Yammer at the moment for that, because particularly for frontline workers, so our technicians, our valeters, our drivers, they don't have time to sit and, you know, wade through an intranet to find the information that's relevant to them, but they are used to social media. So it's thinking about I think outside of work, what is it that they usually engage with, and how can we create and give them a platform of something that's familiar to them then within the business? And Yammer is a great example of that, because it feels like a social media feed. It's light touch, it's fun, it's engaging, it's about getting culture and information across in a more casual way. So it's thinking about what is the device that they've got, what is then what channels they're used to engaging with in their normal lives outside of work, and then how could you mirror that internally from a colleague engagement perspective.
Excellent. I think that really fits well into the context of the fourth sort of shift and theme that I was going to bring up today, which is really a recognition, maybe a realization as well, but certainly a recognition that we are part of the battle for people's attention. Employee engagement, internal communications, it is part of this paradigm of the battle for people's attention, which we're very familiar with, through debates around social media and streaming, etc. And the truth is, many of our colleagues and many of our organizations are overloaded with information. They're confused about which platforms to go to. I read a survey which just came out the other day. I think it was Qualtrics, if I'm not mistaken, but it said that organizations of 500 employees and above are averaging around 120 business apps per organization. It's such a confusing environment for employees. So I think as a technology provider in the digital workplace, such as ourselves, the onus is on us and the responsibility is on us to humanize the employee experience and personalize, much more personalization and relevance around what the digital workplace is for employees, so that they're really getting the support they need to do their jobs, to connect with colleagues, to socialize, to find the tools and resources they need to do their jobs effectively and safely, and essentially take out that tech complexity and create that singular experience. So is that something that is being discussed in Jardine Motors, or that you're noticing in the wider context yourself?
Yeah, and do you know what? It's quite scary, because to achieve that requires a huge leap of faith, to almost say stop. The culture of communication has got to change, and it relies on it relies on trust and from the top as well, from the executive committee to believe in that. I think the thing that I can reflect on is we're not one brand, right? So we're Jardine Motors as a group, but within that we've got 14 manufacturer brands as well. So from my perspective, and thinking about the attention of the colleagues, it's a constant almost battle and conflict, because you've got stuff that you need to communicate as a group, as a company responsible for those colleagues, but equally there's things that are coming from the manufacturer brands, and there's stuff within the sites are treated almost as mini SMEs. So there's a constant layering and hierarchy of communication, and that's part of the challenge. I think part of the solution is you've really got to simplify your tech stack. We've been doing that for the last couple of years, generally across the group, in terms of the operational side of the business. And looking at, when I talk about the leap of faith, it's having that realization that, there's certain communication that you need to push, and there's certain communication that's a pull, isn't it? Colleagues will go and find information when they're ready to, because they need it. So if I was to take, for example, one of the big sections of our intranet is a process and policies library, and it's full of hundreds of documents. Now, you don't need to tell people it's always there, but when they need to know what is the policy for paternity leave, or what is the policy for annual leave, or the policy that might be operationally related to a workshop process, they go and find it. So it's that balance between, you don't always need to push the communication, but you need to have the information there when a colleague needs it at that right moment in time. And I think part of the challenge is helping people understand that, and also then automate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That making it just really easy for colleagues to serve themselves in many ways, for things such as policies and different compliance manuals and everything like that. So Amanda, we're going to come towards the end of the presentation. apologies for leaving you on your own at the beginning with the technical problems. Lots of distractions going on as well around me here. But I just wanted to finish up with a number of sort of 4 main points, just to summarize a little bit, the 4 main points that we're seeing in terms of shifts. So first of all, the hybrid workplace is the future of work, that all of the data, all of the direction that we're seeing is going in that direction. And internal comms is an imperative now. It puts new demands, though, on your employee experience platform. And that's an extremely important recognition. It's a welcome challenge, I think, and a welcome elevation of the importance of internal comms and employee experience. But you can't delegate employee experience to a single app. And as you said, Amanda, you need to be where your people are. So behind that, there's a lot of integration, a lot of personalization, a lot of humanizing of the employee experience. The third point would be that employee experience must respect people's attention, right? We're in this battle for attention. We need to cut through the noise for the employees while reducing that tech complexity. And finally, I would say, recognizing that hybrid is the future workplace model, to succeed, we must humanize the employee experience and personalize the digital workplace. So unless there's any final words from your side, Amanda, that's an over and out from me. And thank you all very much, everybody, for joining us for this presentation and session.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. I wanted you to make a little wrap up about the incredible shift that you were talking about before in your presentation, but you made it before I asked. So thank you so much. That's great.
And if I may, Elise, sorry, yes, I'll put in the chat. We have what I think is a really useful resource. It's an ebook on digital trends 2021, but it comes a lot with recommendations and real world use cases. And I'd be delighted to share it with everybody. So I'll just pop it into the chat now in a moment, and we'll love to hear from anybody who's interested to know more about their own specific situation.
Okay, very interesting, and very interesting exchange between your two experiences.